Hey guys, welcome back to the Existential Vegan. X here. It's a beautiful day today to make some sauerkraut. Sauerkraut's a great natural probiotic. Apparently it's much better than the stuff you buy in stores because it survives through your stomach into your GI tract. But this is going to be a quick video and I'm going to show you how I make it. Let's have a look at what we need. Okay guys, what we're going to need here, of course, are some cabbage. I have a couple small cabbage. I'm going to use a green one and a red cabbage. Some salt. You don't want to use iodized salt. So this is a coarse pickling salt. A knife. I'm going to try out my mandolin, but you don't need it. I've made sauerkraut before with just the knife. And the important thing here are these jars we're going to use. These are Fido jars. These are by far the best jars to use for preserving your sauerkraut. They have excellent seals, yet they will allow the CO2 gas to escape when you're storing them. After you cut up your sauerkraut, you're going to want to weigh the cabbage. You're going to want to weigh the cabbage in order to determine how much salt to use. There's people out there like Sandor Katz who just sort of go by feel. You know, he says use as much salt to taste, he'll say. But most people will use a formula to determine how much salt to use. And we're going to do that, so we're going to use a scale. Now I'm going to go and wash my cabbage and I'm going to peel off the outer leaves, and we're going to save some of those leaves for later, and you'll see why. And while I'm doing that, you can have a little look at some interesting facts about sauerkraut and fermentation. Now you guys can pause this part right here if you want to read about fermentation. But it's a great way to preserve the food, and it creates enzymes and vitamins C and B. Okay, so I've washed the cabbage, and now what we want to do, when I save the leaves, those are some of the outer leaves, and that'll be for holding down the cabbage when it's in the Fido jars. But what we want to do is decore the cabbage. So I'm just going to cut the cabbage off center. That'll split it open, and then I'm just going to cut out the core. So let's do that. So I've cut the cabbage in half. These two halves here don't have the core at all, so we'll cut those up a little smaller and run them through the mandolin in a few minutes. And the core is in these halves here, and what I'm going to do is just cut up here, cut into the cabbage, and take the core out. Okay, so there's the half with the core taken out, and I'll just show you how I do it right now with this one here. Just like that. Okay, so the most important thing when making sauerkraut is adding the correct amount of salt. And the easiest way to do that is to weigh your cabbage, weigh your vegetables, and the easiest way is to weigh it in grams and then multiply it by 0.02, and that will give you the amount of salt to use in grams. So we have our container on top of the scale. We're going to zero the weight of the container, the bowl here. So it's 0. Let's weigh our cabbage. Let's just do 2 at a time. So 1077 grams for these two. 1077. And $11.99 for these two. And now I'm going to cut these up into more manageable pieces, and we'll shred them on the mandolin.
Anything else?
No. Okay guys, so I'm also going to add some garlic and onion to my sauerkraut. You probably won't want to do that. Maybe you do. Like I've said before, I like the stronger flavors. So I'm adding onion and garlic, and that weighs 144 grams. So I did the math. So it's a total of 2420 grams of vegetables times 0.02. So we're going to use 48.4 grams of salt. While I'm cutting up the cabbage, you guys can have a look at this sheet here, probably the most important sheet of the entire video. And this is how you calculate the salt. 3 tablespoons of salt for every 5 pounds of cabbage. And the best way really is to weigh it in grams and multiply by 0.02. And use non-iodized salt, such as canning, pickling, or a mineral-rich salt, like Himalayan pink sea salt will work good too. Okay guys, this is what 48 grams of salt looks like. It's not that much really. So the important thing to remember here is to add your salt in layers. So I'm going to start using the mandolin, and we're going to shred our cabbage. I've never used this one before, obviously, but we're just going to start shredding the cabbage. And when I get a good layer down in this pot, I'm going to put some salt in it, and then I'm going to shred more cabbage, and we'll do the same until the cabbage is all shredded. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to show you a chart of what kind of bacteria are involved in the process of fermentation. Okay, so there's a little layer of cabbage. So I just thought I'd show you before I show you that sheet. Just put a little bit of salt in there. Do another layer, a little bit more salt until you're done. Here's a shot that shows you the bacteria involved and the stages of fermentation, in case you want to pause the video and just find out what's going on. Okay, so we're ready to add the last of the salt. I put the salt in layers. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend 15 minutes or so just massaging the salt and the cabbage together. And the salt is going to draw out the water in the cabbage, and the cabbage will reduce in volume. So in about 15 minutes or so, the volume of this cabbage will be reduced by half, and then we'll be ready to stuff it in the jar. So you can see how much this cabbage has reduced in volume. And if I can get Mrs. X to go up over, you can see the liquid in the bottom. So you can see it's drawing out the water, the liquid. And we're ready to stuff this stuff inside the Fido jars. Mrs. X was kind enough to bring me a coffee. Now comes the fun part where we stuff the cabbage into the Fido jars. And what you want to do is stuff them good and tight. So you put the cabbage in the jar, you're going to push down with your fingers, add more cabbage, etc. And you're going to fill it up to the shoulder with cabbage. This is a messy process. There's no way around it. So I'm going to do this, and when we come back I'll show you what they look like when they're full. I thought I'd show you what it's like stuffing these jars. Can you see the liquid coming up as you push down? You do want to push down very hard. Okay guys, this is what sauerkraut looks like after it's been stuffed. You basically fill it up to the shoulder, and you can see there's about an inch of liquid above. And if you don't have enough liquid in your jar for whatever reason, you will have some left over and you can pour it in. But I don't think I need to in this case. Now the important thing is we have to keep the cabbage under the brine, because fermentation is an anaerobic process, so that means it needs to stay under the brine, and very easy to do. That's why we saved a cabbage leaf, and that's why I want to show you guys this dehydrator screen. You can get these at Amazon, and I got this idea from Leah from Nourishing Treasures. Google Nourishing Treasures and you'll find her website and some of her videos, and she's very knowledgeable about fermentation. But what we'll do is we'll do one of each. I cut out a circle out of the dehydration screen, and we're going to submerge the liquid, or submerge the cabbage under the liquid. So we're going to put that in there like that. Now it doesn't look like you need to, because that's down there solid. But you can always put something a little heavy on top. And I just have a little glass jar doohickey here. And we're ready to seal that up. And if you want to use a cabbage leaf, we're going to do one of each. Remember the leaves we saved? We'll just try one first. You just fold it up. And we're going to stuff that in there to hold everything under. Yeah, and that's going to be fine, just like that. Yeah. So we're going to close that up. And then we're going to take this stuff downstairs where I normally keep it. And we're going to let it ferment for a month. What I like about these 1 liter jars is that after fermentation, you could they'll fit in the fridge nicely just the way they are. If you have a bigger jar, you'll probably have to transfer it to a smaller jar than into the, your main fridge. But if you just use these 1 liter jars, they're great. You just put it in your fridge and you're ready to go. So in a month from now, we'll open up one of these and see how it is. So let's take these downstairs, and in the meantime, I'm going to show you a step-by-step chart that I made up that you can pause the video if you want to make this stuff on your own. Okay guys, this is a step-by-step chart for you. You can pause this if you're making it on your own. You peel off the outer layers, cut out the core, you weigh the cabbage. You shred the cabbage to desired thickness. You add salt. Best way to do it is weight of cabbage in grams times 0.02. Massage the salt and cabbage together. 15 minutes usually does it, unless you're making a whole lot of cabbage. Stuff it in the Fido jars, good and tight, up to the shoulder. Top it up with extra brine if you need to. Weigh down the cabbage, like I just showed you. We're going to let it ferment for 30 days. Whatever you do, do not open the jar. Just trust the process. The CO2 gas will escape out of the seal, so you might get some liquid coming with it out of the seal. Just wipe your jar off every now and then with soapy water. Sit the jars on a towel, and you're going to be fine. Give it the 30 days so you get all the advantages of all the probiotics that are being made. So we're all done. I took the jars downstairs, and the final thing to do is you don't want them exposed to sunlight too much or too much light. So I'm just going to cover them up with a towel and trust the process. Just you can check on it now and then. Don't worry if there's any what you think are leaks. Just wipe the jars off. The important thing is use the Fido jars. Write on your calendar 30 days from now, and you know, it could be 40, 50, but in 30 days we'll open one of these up. But like I said, trust the process. Everything's going to be fine, and thanks for watching, and remember, life is more than food.